What happens when a beloved British actor's polite demeanor finally snaps under pressure? In just 43 seconds, Lorraine Kelly's morning show went from cheerful banter to complete chaos, leaving viewers across the nation stunned and the host scrambling to regain control. Last night, exclusive footage emerged of the most shocking celebrity meltdown in daytime television history, and what you're about to hear will change how you see your favorite morning presenter forever. Good morning, and welcome to this exclusive commentary breakdown of the most explosive television moment that had social media buzzing until the early hours. I'm here to walk you through exactly what happened when Colin Firth, the usually composed Pride and Prejudice star, reached his absolute breaking point live on air. The morning started like any other on The Lorraine Show. Bright studio lights, that familiar purple sofa, and Lorraine Kelly's trademark smile welcoming viewers to another day of celebrity interviews and lifestyle segments. Colin Firth had been booked to discuss his latest film project, what should have been a straightforward promotional appearance for one of Britain's most respected actors. But something was different from the moment Colin walked onto that set. Those who know him well describe a man who chooses his words carefully, who thinks before he speaks, and who treats every interviewer with genuine respect. This morning, however, there was a tension in the air that even the studio audience could feel. Lorraine opened with her usual enthusiasm, that sing-song Scottish accent cutting through the morning television atmosphere. Right then, we're absolutely delighted to have the wonderful Colin Firth with us this morning, she began, leaning forward on the sofa with that practiced television presenter posture. Now, Colin, darling, I have to ask you about something that's been all over the papers this week. And there it was, the first red flag. Colin's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, but viewers watching closely could see his jaw tighten just slightly. He'd clearly come prepared to discuss his film, his craft, his upcoming projects. Instead, Lorraine was diving straight into tabloid territory. The thing is, Lorraine continued, her voice taking on that gossipy tone that morning television presenters perfect over years of practice, everyone's been talking about your personal life lately, and I think our viewers deserve to know the truth. Colin straightened in his seat, maintaining that professional actor's composure that had served him through decades of interviews. I'd really prefer to focus on the film today, Lorraine. That's what we agreed to discuss. His voice was calm, measured, but there was something underneath it. A warning, perhaps. A gentle request to steer the conversation back to safer waters. But Lorraine Kelly didn't seem to hear it, or maybe she chose not to. Oh, come on now, she laughed, waving her hand dismissively. You can't expect to come on television and not talk about the elephant in the room. Our audience is smart, Colin. They read the papers. They know what's going on. The camera captured Colin's face perfectly in that moment. The slight furrow of his brow, the way his hands moved to rest more firmly on his knees. He was a man trying very hard to remain professional in the face of something he clearly hadn't signed up for. What elephant would that be, Lorraine? He asked quietly. And that's when everything started to unravel. Lorraine leaned back, clearly pleased with herself, as if she'd just landed some sort of journalistic coup. Well, the separation rumors, of course. The stories about you and Livia. I mean, after 20 years of marriage, surely you can give us something. The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Colin Firth, the man who had charmed audiences as Mr. Darcy, who had brought depth and nuance to countless characters, sat there processing what had just happened. He'd been ambushed, pure and simple. I see, he said finally, and those two words carried more weight than any dramatic monologue. So this was never about the film at all. Lorraine's smile faltered for just a moment, but she pressed on. Now, don't be like that. We're all friends here. I'm just asking what everyone else is thinking. Friends? Colin repeated, and for the first time that morning, his voice carried a sharp edge that made everyone in the studio sit up straighter. Is that what friends do, Lorraine? Invite someone onto their show under false pretenses, and then ambush them with personal questions they've specifically asked not to discuss? The change in atmosphere was immediate and palpable. What had started as typical morning television banter was quickly becoming something much more uncomfortable. Lorraine shifted in her seat, her practiced presenter smile still in place, but looking increasingly forced. Oh, now you're being dramatic, she said with a laugh that sounded hollow even through the television speakers. It's just a simple question. You're a public figure, Colin. These things come with the territory. Colin's response came quietly, but with the kind of precision that only a trained actor could deliver. Being a public figure doesn't mean I've forfeited my right to privacy about my family, and it certainly doesn't mean I've agreed to have my personal life dissected for entertainment. The studio audience was dead silent now. You could practically feel the discomfort radiating from every corner of the room. This wasn't the cheerful morning chat show content they'd expected to witness. But Lorraine wasn't backing down. If anything, she seemed to double down on her approach, perhaps thinking she could charm her way out of the increasingly tense situation. "Look, I understand you want to protect your privacy," she said, leaning forward again with what appeared to be a sympathetic expression. "But let's be honest here. You've been photographed. There are sources. The story is already out there. I'm giving you a chance to set the record straight." Colin's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You're giving me a chance? How generous of you, Lorraine. And what exactly am I supposed to be grateful for? The opportunity to have my marriage examined like some sort of soap opera plotline?" "That's not what I'm doing," Lorraine protested, but her voice had taken on a defensive quality that viewers could easily detect. "I'm simply asking you to address the rumors." "No," Colin said firmly. "What you're doing is exploiting gossip for ratings. What you're doing is pretending that your curiosity somehow serves the public interest. What you're doing is exactly the kind of tabloid journalism that makes actors reluctant to do interviews in the first place." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lorraine's face had gone through several expressions in the span of a few seconds, from surprise to indignation to something that looked almost like panic. "I think you're overreacting," she said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. "This is morning television, Colin. People expect a bit of fun, a bit of gossip. It's not meant to be the BBC News." Colin stood up slowly from the purple sofa, and the simple action felt like a seismic shift in the studio's energy. "Fun?" he repeated. "Is that what you call it when you pry into someone's marriage without their consent? When you turn personal pain into entertainment?" "Now hold on just a minute," Lorraine said, her own voice rising slightly as she seemed to realize she was losing control of the situation entirely. "You knew what kind of show this was when you agreed to come on. Don't act like you're some sort of victim here." The word victim seemed to hit Colin like a physical blow. His composure, which had been fraying at the edges, finally began to crack completely. "Victim," he said, his voice carrying a quiet intensity that was somehow more powerful than shouting would have been. "You invite me here under the pretense of discussing my work, then blindside me with questions about my personal life, and when I object, you tell me I'm overreacting and that I somehow asked for this treatment?" Lorraine was clearly flustered now, her professional presenter mask slipping more with each passing second. "Colin, please sit down. Let's just calm down and have a proper conversation." "A proper conversation?" Colin's voice was rising now, the control he'd maintained throughout his career finally giving way. "Is that what you call this? You've spent the entire interview trying to extract personal information that I've explicitly said I don't want to discuss. And now you want me to calm down?" The camera operator seemed unsure where to focus, switching between close-ups of Colin's increasingly animated face and wide shots that captured the growing tension between host and guest. In the background, producers could be seen gesturing frantically, clearly trying to figure out how to salvage what was quickly becoming a public relations nightmare. "I'm just doing my job," Lorraine said, but her voice sounded small and defensive now. Colin turned to face her directly, his eyes blazing with an anger that seemed to surprise even him. "Your job? Your job is supposed to be interviewing people, not interrogating them. Your job is supposed to be entertainment, not exploitation. Your job is supposed to involve some basic level of human decency and respect." The studio had gone completely silent except for the sound of Colin's voice, which seemed to fill every corner of the space with its intensity. "And you know what the worst part is, Lorraine?" Colin continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. "The worst part is that you sit there with that fake smile, pretending to care about me as a person, when all you really care about is whether I'll give you something juicy enough to trend on social media." Lorraine's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. For perhaps the first time in her broadcasting career, she appeared to be genuinely speechless. Colin wasn't finished. The dam had burst, and years of frustration with invasive media coverage seemed to pour out all at once. "Do you have any idea what it's like to have every aspect of your private life treated as public property? Do you understand what it does to a family when their most intimate moments become fodder for morning television? Colin, I think you need to remember where you are. Lorraine finally managed, her voice shaking slightly as she attempted to regain some semblance of control. "This is live television. There are millions of people watching." Colin's response was swift and devastating. "Oh, I know exactly where I am, Lorraine. I'm sitting across from someone who thinks that having a television show gives her the right to pry into people's lives without consequence. I'm in a studio where basic human decency apparently doesn't apply as long as the cameras are rolling." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Lorraine's face had gone pale, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shaken. "That's not fair," she whispered. "Fair?" Colin's laugh was bitter. "You want to talk about what's fair? Is it fair that I came here in good faith to discuss my work, only to be subjected to an interrogation about my marriage? Is it fair that you've spent this entire interview trying to extract personal information that could hurt the people I love most in the world?" Lorraine straightened in her chair, and for a brief moment, it looked like she might fight back. "I'm a journalist, Colin. I ask the questions that people want answered." "No," Colin said firmly, pointing directly at her. "You're not a journalist. Journalists have ethics. Journalists respect their subjects. Journalists don't ambush people and then hide behind their profession when called out for it." The words hit Lorraine like a physical slap. Her carefully constructed presenter persona crumbled completely, replaced by something raw and defensive. "How dare you?" she sputtered. "I've been doing this job for decades. I've interviewed everyone from prime ministers to movie stars. I don't need some actor telling me how to do my job." Colin's expression shifted, and suddenly the anger was replaced by something that looked almost like pity. "And in all those decades, Lorraine, have you ever stopped to consider the cost? Have you ever thought about the damage you might be doing to real people's lives for the sake of entertainment?" The question seemed to hit its target. Lorraine's face went through a series of expressions, from anger to confusion to something that might have been shame. She began, but Colin held up a hand to stop her. "Do you know what the truly tragic part is?" he continued, his voice now quiet but filled with disappointment. "You could have had a perfectly good interview today. We could have talked about the craft of acting, about the new film, about the industry. Your viewers could have learned something meaningful. Instead, you chose to turn this into a circus." Lorraine tried one more time to regain her footing. "The audience wants to know about your personal life, Colin. That's just the reality of celebrity culture." Colin shook his head slowly. "No, Lorraine, you want to know about my personal life. You've convinced yourself that your curiosity represents some sort of public interest, but really, it's just voyeurism dressed up as journalism." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the studio crew had stopped moving, everyone frozen in place by the intensity of what they were witnessing. Colin looked around the studio, taking in the cameras, the crew, the audience that had come expecting light entertainment and instead found themselves watching a man's dignity under assault. "You know what the saddest part of all this is?" he said finally. "Somewhere out there are young actors watching this, and they're learning that this is what they have to expect. That their personal lives will be treated as commodities. That respect is optional as long as the ratings are good." He turned back to Lorraine, who was now visibly struggling to maintain her composure. "Is that the legacy you want, Lorraine? Is that what you want to be remembered for?" Lorraine's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying to do my job." Colin gathered his jacket from the back of the sofa, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Then maybe it's time to ask yourself whether this job is worth compromising your humanity." He walked toward the studio exit, and for a moment, it seemed like the interview might end there. But then he turned back, and his final words carried the weight of years of frustration and disappointment. "You had a chance today to show your viewers that celebrities are human beings, deserving of basic respect and dignity. Instead, you chose to prove that morning television cares more about gossip than human decency. I hope it was worth it." The studio doors closed behind Colin Firth with a soft click that somehow seemed to echo through the entire space. Lorraine Kelly sat alone on her purple sofa, surrounded by cameras and crew and a studio audience that had witnessed something unprecedented. The cheerful morning show set suddenly felt cold and empty. For several long moments, nobody moved, nobody spoke. The woman who had built her career on quick wit and easy charm found herself completely at a loss for words, staring at the spot where Colin had been sitting just moments before. When she finally turned back to the camera, her smile was nowhere to be found. The mask had slipped completely, and what remained was something raw and uncomfortable and utterly unlike the polished presenter millions of viewers knew. "Well," she said finally, her voice cracking slightly, "I suppose we should take a quick break. But everyone watching knew that this wasn't the kind of break that could fix what had just happened. Some things, once broken, couldn't be put back together with a simple commercial interruption and a fresh cup of tea. The most shocking celebrity walkout in morning television history was complete. But the questions it raised about media ethics, celebrity culture, and human dignity would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling.